So you hear the engine revving, then the sound of crashing into those protective bollards. Witnesses say the driver backed up and...
Hello again, YouTube family. Thanks for joining me on this video. And in this video, we're discussing the recent young man who attempted to breach the White House by driving a U-Haul truck through barricades out on the outskirts of the White House property. The young man was a 19-year-old guy from Chesterfield, Missouri. His name is psyop. Kandula. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And he, as you saw in the video that preceded this, attempted to drive a 26-foot U-Haul truck through barricades into the White House property. He's been charged with one count of depredation of property of the United States in excess of $1,000. He was originally charged with threatening to harm or kill a president, vice president, or family member, also assault with a deadly weapon, reckless operation of a motor vehicle, trespassing. As far as reporting on this shows so far, there were no incidents connected with this incident. The moving truck was rented in D.C. The young man apparently flew to D.C., rented the U-Haul truck, then attempted to ram the barricades outside the White House. Bomb experts have searched the truck. They found no evidence of explosives or incendiary devices. The truck has been deemed harmless now that the young man who was driving it is out of it. As far as we know, the cargo area of the truck was completely empty when he tried to ram the barricades at the White House. The incident happened at Lafayette Square and 16th Street just prior to 10 p.m. on Tuesday night. As you can see in the map, it shows where the truck collided with the barricades. The truck was originally spotted by a parked police officer who witnessed the young man drive up on the curb, then attempt to ram the barricades, and he backed up and tried it again. According to law enforcement, Kandula said he wanted to kidnap and kill Joe Biden to insert himself in charge of the country, which is a clueless kind of notion. And as we go through the bits and pieces of this whole incident, you'll see that the kid is off. I don't know if he has mental problems. I mean, he's not that intelligent from things he's saying, what he's doing. Kadula had a backpack that included tape and a Nazi flag. About the Nazi flag, Kadula stated that Nazis have a great history, I guess, if you consider great, including things like horrible, inhumane treatment of others and losing on a colossal scale, then sure, it's great if that great includes those two pieces. He said he admired their authoritarian nature, eugenics, and their one world order, which is really odd things to say. I don't know that Cthulhu seems to have that much knowledge of Nazi history. And when asked if he looks up to anyone, Kadula said that he looks up to Hitler. He said he looks up to Hitler because Hitler was a strong leader. Again, someone who failed miserably, miscalculated the determination of the rest of the world not to succumb to his tyranny and absurdity, and also someone who killed himself before being defeated. Kadula's aim was to get to the White House, seize power, and put himself in charge of the nation. These are what law enforcement, Secret Service, the people that question this guy are getting from him. That he wanted to seize power and be put in charge of the nation. I mean, insane. Even more insane when you look at it, that it's a 19-year-old kid armed with duct tape and a Nazi flag. I mean, I don't know if this kid thought that he would go to the White House, knock on the door, and Biden or his wife would answer it. They're the ones that live there. I don't know how little knowledge this kid had of exactly what the White House is and how difficult it would be to actually get into the presence of a president. I mean, unless you're an average yokel that's invited to the White House, the only people that get in close contact with the president are other politicians, other world leaders, or rich people who are paying the president to bribe money. Average people aren't going to come in contact with the president. You're not just going to enter the White House and Joe Biden and his wife will be the ones that are there because they live there. I mean, his plan, which he said he had been planning for months. I mean, insane. The idea that this kid's been planning this for months, and that's what he came up with. Ramming through barriers into the White House property, going into the White House, killing the president and inserting himself as president. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that later when we get to talking about how this is being portrayed in right-wing media. There was a search warrant executed at Kadula's home in Missouri. Again, that's Chesterfield, Missouri. It was conducted by the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. Classmates of Kadula had said that he was a quiet guy, a good guy, that he never got in trouble. Well, he's in trouble now. I mean, maybe he was pretty quiet in high school, kept to himself. Maybe he read a lot of the wrong stuff when he was in high school. If what he's saying that he admires Hitler and Nazis is true, I don't know. He was reading something that is propaganda, not actual history, which is one of the problems we have in this country. I mean, we have right-wingers in red states passing laws to even make it more difficult for people to get a good education on history in this country. Here you have the photograph that has been making its way around social media, particularly right-wing social media. And it is the backpack, I believe, a roll of tape, and a Nazi flag that are laid on the ground outside the vehicle. I mean, obviously, when the kid was apprehended, law enforcement emptied out the contents of his backpack, which had the flag. Apparently, from what I was reading, the flag, Kadula pulled the flag out himself when he was arrested. And the other items were just laid out to indicate what was in the backpack. I'm sure they went through every pouch on the backpack to make sure there was nothing else in there. And one thing notably missing from the backpack was any kind of weapon. He had no weapon on him. And again, to think this thing through as to how insane his plan was, he traveled from Missouri to D.C., rented a U-Haul truck, was going to ram his way into the White House property, was going to kidnap and kill the president, insert himself as the new president, presumably an authoritarian president, since he seems to love authoritarianism. And his plan didn't come close to fruition. I mean, he didn't even get to the White House. You know, his plan ended at step one, getting through the barricades. He would have done a better job just walking between the barricades. He had an empty U-Haul truck, and he was going to go and kidnap and kill the president without a weapon. He had no weapon on him. And perhaps a particularly unintelligent 19-year-old with a poor education thought that if he knocked on the door, maybe Joe Biden would answer it and he could overpower the guy and become president. Again, insane. On social media, what you have is the right wing trying to claim that this is a false flag and a psyop. The right wing are doing that to guard against their own vile rhetoric. And this first tweet, which is one of the tweets that have been put up regarding this incident, is Ian Miles Chong, a right-wing person that's on YouTube or Twitter, that says, another non-white white supremacist neo-Nazi. What will they come up with next? And a lot of right-wingers seem to be really focusing on the fact that this kid is not a Caucasian American. Like, somehow you can't be non-white and also a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. You can be non-white and also a neo-Nazi. The other tweet that I captured for this video is Benny Johnson. I believe he is from Turning Point USA, a right-wing group. I could be wrong. I believe that's where he's from. And he again reiterates that, another white supremacist that's not white. How do we have the worst psyops ever? And that's the thing. You have people on Twitter on the right wing that are calling this a false flag, a psyop. They're claiming that this was orchestrated by the FBI. And their rhetoric is to protect the rhetoric, their standard rhetoric, which is very white supremacist, very fascistic, and there is nothing that says you have to be white to be a white supremacist, or that you have to be white to be a neo-Nazi or a Nazi sympathizer or whatever. So what we have is the incident of a young man from Missouri who I would assume has some kind of something going wrong mentally. I don't know if he has diagnosable mental problems or if he's someone that had recently his life went sideways in some way, some fashion, and he just snapped. There are people that just snap. That happens. But you have a man who's not that bright. I can only assume not that well educated. And if you have someone like that who is constantly consuming right-wing content that is very white supremacist, that's very authoritarian, and I'm talking about stuff like the replacement theory kind of rhetoric. You've heard that online a ton. Tucker Carlson, who recently got fired from Fox News, did a lot of replacement theory rhetoric on his show. Trump did that. Trump tried to otherize Hispanic Americans with that replacement theory notion that they were going to replace white people with Hispanics. They being the Democrats, the deep state, whatever boogeyman enemy any right-wing person speaking at a given time is going to identify as the culprit. But if you have someone that's not that bright consuming this kind of rhetoric, and you look at what people on the right were saying after the 2020 election, 4 years, you probably still have some people saying it now, that the ghost of JFK Jr. is going to come back and install Donald Trump as president, or Donald Trump's going to ride into Washington on his white horse, slay all the Democrats and become president again, or insert himself as president, or whatever is going to be. The military is going to come in and reinstall Donald Trump as president. You have that kind of conspiracy theory idiocy out there. If you have a young man like this who has some mental issues, has his head all askew due to whatever went sideways in his life for him, and combine that with someone who's not that bright, someone that's not that intelligent, is either mentally has some mental issues, seriously diagnosable mental issues, or someone whose headspace is in the wrong place because of something that went sideways in his life. If they consume that right-wing content, I can see how they end up coming with the conclusion that, well, I'll just go install myself as president. If it's that easy, if somebody just gets installed as president, insert person A as president, I can see someone having the notion that they can do that. It makes no sense to any of us who have normal common sense, who have a normally functioning brain, who aren't insane in some way, or who aren't hyped up on right-wing conspiracy theory idiocy, which is pushed daily, non-stop. I mean, and one of the things I was looking at in researching for this was Media Matters discussing the blue checkmark stuff. Since Elon Musk took over Twitter, you've had Musk reinsert a lot of right-wing people who had been banned for vile rhetoric, for conspiracy theory nonsense, who were reinstated in Twitter after Elon Musk took back over. I mean, one of the things he did in his lunacy buying Twitter for way more than it was worth was buying Twitter, putting all these right-wing people back onto it. And then he made the blue check mark, which used to include a verification process, where if you wanted a blue check mark, you had to submit documentation to Twitter, the old people who ran Twitter, so that they could verify you are who you say you are, and you could get a blue check mark. And that was to protect people on Twitter, users on Twitter, so that if someone was claiming to be this person, they were that person because they were verified. And Elon Musk, because of all of the stuff he's done that ran Twitter into the ground, and it's probably on its way to bankruptcy or insolvency, is just selling the blue check mark. All you got to do is pay money and you get a blue check mark. You could literally name yourself anything that's available, any name that's available on Twitter, and get a blue check mark. And that's one of the issues that advertisers have with Twitter, is that there's no verification anymore. Anybody willing to pay the $8, $10, whatever it is per month for a blue check mark can get a blue check mark. And it used to be a verification process. But now you have all these people on Twitter that are back on Twitter because of Musk, right-wingers who have been banned from Twitter because of their rhetoric, because of violent rhetoric, hateful rhetoric, conspiracy theory rhetoric that violated the terms of service of Twitter. They're all back on there. And now, even with this, they're saying, false flag or psyop. Psyop seems to be a popular new term for the right wing. For a long time, you had Alex Jones, one of the loudest voices on the right, claiming false flag, false flag, false flag, and everything was not real, just staged by the Democrats or staged by the deep state, the dark forces running the government. But in reality, all we have so far is this is a disturbed 19-year-old who is well on his way to ruining his life at a young age. It's tragic. Like I said, he's, in my opinion, either mentally deranged, severely poorly educated. His knowledge base is very poor, and possibly hyped up on right-wing rhetoric, because that's where you're going to get most of the, if not all of the, Nazi rhetoric to say ridiculous things like the Nazis have a great history. Like I said, if a great history involves horrible human rights violations, the atrocities committed to the Jews, along with complete failure. I mean, let's face it, the Nazis pushed at the world pushed back, and the Nazis collapsed. They fell. And the same thing with Hitler. The kid said he was a great leader. What makes a great leader? I mean, being someone who tries to assert force on the rest of the world, who gets collapsed and defeated, and then who takes the, as some people would say, coward's way out to kill himself as his forces were losing, as the world's forces were closing in. He puts a bullet in his own head to kill himself, to not have to face justice for what he had done. That does not seem like a strong leader to me. I would assume most people with a normal sensibility would agree with that take. This kid, not so much. The investigation into this kid is ongoing. Who knows what's going to come out? They, like I said, they executed the search warrant on the kid's home. I'm assuming it's his parents' home. He's 19. There aren't a lot of 19-year-olds living on their own. It's possible the kid was renting an apartment, renting a mobile home, something, working whatever job he was working out of high school. But I'm guessing it was his parents' home. I've not seen anything so far in the news about his parents, who they were, the kid's history. All we have are comments from people he went to high school with that said he was quiet, kept to himself, he was a good kid, never got in trouble. But he is in trouble. He found a way to get in trouble. Really big trouble. And depending on what charges they end up settling on with this kid, I know they've got the charge of damaging the U.S. property in excess of $1,000. How much of the other stuff, the assault with a deadly weapon, I mean, what he assaulted was an inanimate object. There are no injuries indicated at all in any news reports. As far as I can see, there's no pedestrians that were injured. There was no Secret Service people, no Capitol Police, none of the Park Police, nobody inside the White House. There was nobody injured in this, other than some scuffed up barricades on the perimeter of the White House. And like I said, this kid didn't even get onto the White House property. That's how poor his plan was. That's why I say he seems to be rather poorly educated. His plan didn't even get him onto the White House property. He failed at step one, and perhaps you can say he followed the Nazi tradition, failure. And maybe that will make him proud. I don't know if there's something more to this, if there's more people behind this that were setting this kid up because he wasn't that bright, but there is no indication whatsoever there's any kind of false flag, any kind of psyop. That doesn't make any sense. And we'll see where it goes. If there's any startling revelations, I will read about them and I will put them here on the channel. But thanks to all of you who watched this video. Please give me a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And by all means, have a good rest of your day.